In complex systems like the global economy and nature, size is not just one attribute. It is the defining attribute of agents that governs their capacities, functions and relationships. And that is true at many levels. Let's start with some elementary physics. You know that fleas can jump incredible heights and ants can carry enormous weights. You first hear of these superorganism feats as a child. To make sure that you're suitably impressed, they convert it to human equivalents in terms of body weight or body length. A frog hopper can jump 115 times its body length. It's like a human leaping to the roof of a skyscraper. Rhinoceros beetles can lift something 850 times their own weight. Like a human lifting a tank. A dung beetle can pull stuff 1,141 times their own body weight. A human pulling a dozen occupied buses. And so on. Every time someone converts these supposedly extraordinary feats into human equivalents without then explaining the simple reason for them, they do you a great disservice.
Man-size.
Because they are inadvertently setting your education 500 years back in time. Galileo understood and described this well. By now, it should be common knowledge that at smaller scales, there's nothing extraordinary about these feats. The human comparisons actually distract you from making the connection to a fundamental scientific insight from something you know instinctively. If you have a short coffee table with legs that are too weak to support an aquarium, for example, elongating its legs will do absolutely nothing to make it any stronger, even though in terms of volume the legs are now bigger. It's all down to the square cube law. YouTube already has excellent videos explaining it. Briefly, if you proportionately magnify an object x times, its volume and weight increase x cubed times, but its surface area only increases x squared times. Blow something up to double size and it has 8 times the weight, but only 4 times the surface area. When you magnify things up to scale, you get a much larger volume enclosed by a relatively smaller surface area. With the table, its ability to bear weight is proportional to the cross-sectional area of the legs, because all the weight above is to be borne at the bottommost layer of each leg. So to hold heavier things, you need to make the legs thicker. This is why the legs of elephants are relatively much thicker than a deer's, much more than the difference between their heights. For the same reason, at the scale of insects, their weight feels negligible even to their skinny legs. This physics applies to any aspect of body design where the volume to surface ratio matters. Mammals like us maintain their body temperature by sweating. If a mammal is going to evolve to be 3 meters high and weigh 6,000 kilograms, like an elephant, your body's surface is suddenly not sufficient to cool you down by perspiring alone. So, you lose the fur your ancestors needed in the ancient cold climate and your ears get comically large. You circulate blood through them and flap them to cool down. A rabbit blown up to the size of an elephant would not be able to move, let alone jump. Its legs would be too weak. Also, it would feel exhausted from heat, all the time. No Hollywood film should be getting away with depicting animals many times their natural size, but to scale. Kids who know what Galileo understood just wouldn't buy it. Now that you know that, you should have a prediction. The smaller you go, the more apparently extraordinary things get. Life doesn't stop at insects. The gonorrhea bacteria can pull 100,000 times their own weight. Like a human tugging 3 Saturn V rockets. No, just no. It's not impressive. At those scales, that's the mundane life.
Now biology. We've just understood that in relative terms, those who are smaller are much stronger. But still, if you were picking opponents in a boxing or wrestling match out of a lineup of humans, your own species, you'd probably not pick the largest people. Once again, that logic fails when picking between different species. Think of the fiercest animal you'd rather not face in a tropical forest. Let's say in South Asia. You'd say a tiger. But what is the largest animal there? An elephant. The ratio of sizes between the most fearsome animal and the largest animal on the East African savanna is roughly the same. What about on a farm? Let's say in East Europe. The animal that could tear you apart is the dog. The largest is a horse. Similar ratio. Horses are all rippling muscle, but no bodily weaponry because they don't hunt. Just to drive home the point that it has always been this way, let's go Jurassic. Think of the largest dinosaur you can name. Now, name the one they are all running away from in the movies. Does the ratio of their sizes check out? So why are herbivores so much larger? No, the lesson is not that vegetarianism is the way to bulk up muscles. It is to do with trophic levels and the conservation of energy. Yes, it is probably all coming back from school. About 90% of whatever an animal eats gets spent as energy or is dissipated as heat. Only about 10% goes into growth of the animal itself. That is, it gets converted into the animal's own weight. And so it is at every trophic level. Every ton of plant matter consumed in a forest will support about 100 kilograms of animals that ate it. Only 10 kg of the carnivore species that hunts them in turn, and only 1 kg any super predators that prey on that carnivore, and so on. Naturally, most terrestrial ecosystems, with all their innumerable plants and trees, can support a much greater weight of herbivores than carnivores, including a few heavyweights that no one dares to hunt. Now that you are reminded of all this, you should be ready to combine the concepts from both physics and biology, and to extrapolate. Elephants are not the largest mammal. Not by a long shot. Where would we expect to find the largest mammal? Also the largest animal, where the problem isn't one of cooling down, but of preventing the loss of body heat, and fur just isn't going to cut it. Deep oceans are cold, and the temperature doesn't vary as much as on land. So some mammals who descended from ancestors who returned to the ocean grabbed the chance to try bulking up like nothing before. In terms of nutrition, the best bet is to eat some of the smallest animals, because theirs is the kind of biomass in the greatest abundance. Let's see that again. And so, whales are ginormous, they don't have comically large ears, and they ate some of the smallest animals down there.
And now, it's time to think of all this in a more applied way. Many have compared natural ecosystems to well-organized, free and competitive markets. In fact, the phrase survival of the fittest was first coined specifically to draw this analogy. It is not an exact analogy and doesn't serve for all purposes, but you can sort of see the extent to which it applies. Firms compete in those that are not managed well or make products that consumers no longer want, go bust and exit the market like organisms that cannot adapt. Through mutations or innovations, new upstarts keep emerging to try their luck. Competitive firms grow in market share. They get larger. Healthy forests might make you take a second look at some markets. In a diverse competitive ecosystem like Kruger National Park, you expect every niche to be filled. Herbivorous prey is abundant in a wide range of sizes, so there should also be carnivores in a wide range of sizes. And that is exactly what you find. These are silhouettes of all carnivores mapped to scale. Now imagine you came across an ecosystem where the only predators were either larger than a lion or smaller than a fox on that scale. That should leave you puzzled. That's a yawning gap, and it needs an explanation. Turns out that's what the carnivore dinosaur population of the Hell Creek Formation in North America looks like. Paleontologists have settled on an explanation. You see, reptiles don't take care of their young for long after they hatch, and if you're going to grow to be a few tons, you spend quite a lot of time growing. Teenage theropod dinosaurs hunted for themselves, but could not hunt the same huge beasts that their parents took down. So younger carnivore dinosaurs ended up occupying an entirely separate niche than their parent. It's one predator species acting like several over its lifetime. That doesn't leave space for mid-sized hunting dinosaurs. The system is less stable than Kruger Park. If a catastrophic event strikes and takes out the largest predators, the system may never recover. With that in mind, what about markets? What does the distribution of companies by size tell us about the competitiveness of a market? USA was once a pioneer in antitrust and competition regulation. Yet today, the European Union is demonstrably a far more competitive market. That book offers plenty of evidence, but you don't have to go that far. YouTube itself, or WhatsApp or LinkedIn, could have been a healthy mid-sized tech company, but they aren't. Instead, they got acquired by Google, Facebook, and Microsoft respectively early on. We even call Alphabet and Meta parent companies. Think of dinosaurs adopting teenagers so that all mid-sized prey comes back to the same family and there's no significant competition. You might think with social media companies, it makes sense for larger companies to prevail and subsume others because of network effects, or with airlines, too big and complicated. But you actually see the phenomenon in several US industries. Think of soft drinks. That's not a complicated product. It's just water with a whole lot of sugar and carbon dioxide. Yet the market is dominated by three giants. Here's a partial list of companies that acquired firms worth more than $1 billion since 1997. The number on the right is the number of such acquisitions. Commonly, policymakers worry that a lack of competition will mean higher prices that hurt consumers. But the instability can just as well go the other way. Again, take the United States. It is a mature market, after all. On top of that, its pharmaceutical industry is the world's most innovative by some measures. In the broader market, though, many transactions go through what are called group purchasing organizations. They buy drugs from pharmaceutical companies on behalf of hospitals. 3 of them control over 90% of the market. The rest is split between hundreds of other players. For several drugs, prices have been driven so low that manufacturers went bankrupt. The country's been seeing chronic shortages for life-saving medicine. Likewise with scale. At investment fairs and startup incubators, you hear a lot of talk of scalability. Even though we know that out in the real world, organizations, business processes and product offerings change considerably in fundamental ways when expanded beyond 2 or 3 orders of magnitude, the same as an animal's bones. Size certainly isn't everything, especially at an individual level, but at a system level, it tells you a lot, even in a snapshot. When trying to assess if everything is all right with the system or trying to diagnose problems when you suspect something isn't, the distribution of sizes and relationships between the small, medium and large is a good starting point. What about your country? Is it like Kruger National Park or like Hell Creek?